This episode of the Long Run Podcast is sponsored by Skechers. Evening, everybody, and welcome to a special, very special show. We've got a banger planned tonight. I've got my friend, my friend Keith from Skechers in the US, who's live with me tonight, and we're going to be geeking. Well, I'm going to be geeking out about running shoes. This is for all you shoe geeks out there. This is for anybody who's really interested in running shoes. But maybe, you just want to find out a little bit more about what goes into some of the running shoes. And I'm genuinely really excited about this. As a shoe geek, hopefully you guys know how much I love Skechers anyway. Yes, they are sponsoring this, but I'm a big Skechers fan anyway, as you guys know. But I really am excited to have Keith on. Thanks, Keith, for coming on. Because I really just want to dive into the tech. And I've just realized, actually, I was talking to Keith before we came on, all the shoes behind you. You've got the Razor. I'm just seeing if there's anything new there that I haven't spotted.
We've got to cover that one up. We can't
have
that.
Is there any that we shouldn't be talking? It's funny. I've got a big box down here delivered from you guys today that I've not opened up because I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to open it or not today on the show that we're doing later, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's the embargo thing's always kind of funny to deal with when we can and can't talk about stuff. But anyway, thank you, Keith, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And you've always been a great supporter of the brand. So super excited. We geek out more than you do when it comes to talking running shoes. So
I think this is going to be very, very cool. So I thought what we do tonight is over the next half hour is basically talk through, because I think it's really interesting, even if you're not necessarily a shoe geek. The running shoe is such an integral part of the runner, right? And you guys, and people who maybe watch this on YouTube or listen to these podcasts, they hear us talk about midsoles, outsoles, and the importance of a good upper, carbon plates, and all these kind of sort of technologies and things that go into these shoes. And I think it would be a great opportunity today with Keith on to talk about, especially from the guys from Skechers, to talk about, because you guys have been pioneers. We'll come on to like the hyperburst and the critical process that goes into that. But, in some of the stuff, the technology that you put into the shoes, arch fit and things like that, I think it'd be very cool to do if that's okay with you. So I think, if it's all right with you, Keith, I think we'll start, and I've got a brand new pair. Now, if you're listening to this on the podcast, this is going to be no help to you whatsoever, but I'm holding up a brand new pair of ladies Max Road 6 that have just arrived for Sabrina to wear over in Chicago when she's doing the bobble run and all that sort of stuff while she's over in Chicago. So we've got some people going out to do the Chicago Marathon. And I thought this would be a great example because it's a 2023 shoe. It's got some of the latest technology. I know you guys are probably already ahead. We'll try and get some of the information out of you later. But yeah, so I thought it'd be cool if it's all right with you. We'd sort of work through the shoe. And I think starting probably with the midsole, if that's all right. You guys, like I just alluded to, so again, we'll keep people in the midsole is basically the foam bit under your foot. All right. So with regards to Skechers, you've got Hyperburst. Now in this shoe, we've got Hyperburst Ice, which is the new formula. Is that right?
That is correct. Yep.
So what's the sort of process that goes into making a midsole?
Okay. So typically conventional foams, and these are going to be your Phylon type foams. Every brand, if you think about midsole foams as almost like a bread recipe. You're going to mix a bunch of stuff together, mix it up, you add heat, you put it in the oven, and that bread rises, right? Every brand is going to have their own bread formula, small little tweaks here and there. Within the foam, you've got, probably 4 or 5 levers that you can pull. One lever maybe makes it lighter, but you lose some durability. One makes it more responsive, but you add some weight. And so there's different things that you can kind of pull. But for the most part, where every brand has been is in that conventional, even polyurethane EVA type foams. And where we kind of came in at was in 2016, 2017, we had been developing supercritical foaming process. And if you remember, the very first shoe was the Razor 3.
Yeah, I've
And we
got them in the
launched this
garage still.
we
Love that
launched
shoe.
this in 2018 at the New York City Marathon, and it really was the first shoe in the market that had the supercritical foaming process. And really, what it is we sort of start with a baby part, and this is an actual size part. You'll notice that it's kind of translucent because the way supercritical foaming is done, you don't need, I talked about the bread recipe with conventional foam. You need to add something in that sort of starts the chemical reaction. In bread, it might be yeast or something like that. But because we're not doing a traditional chemical reaction, this was solid EVA. And what we do is we put a bunch of these into almost like a pressure cooker, kind of a pressurized chamber. We learned kind of in grade school that there's three phases of matter. There's a solid, there's a liquid, there's a gas, but also kind of in between, there's a supercritical fluid stage. You cannot penetrate the solid with a gas. So when we introduce the carbon dioxide and nitrogen, what we have to do is through temperature and pressure, we can take that gas to a supercritical fluid stage. Then we can fully penetrate these baby parts. Once they're fully penetrated with that supercritical fluid, we quickly change the temperature and the pressure, and that little baby part turns into a full-blown part. So that little teeny piece blows into this big piece. And when I look at this, you kind of see this close up. You can see the cell structure. You can see all the bubbles on the surface. When I show you kind of a cross section, again, doesn't help if you're just listening, but when you see the strong cell structure in there, all of that void, that's what gives supercritical foam, specifically Hyperburst, its lightweight, but also its resiliency, because that cell structure is very thick. It's very strong. So the more you compress it, the more it bounces back. Once we have that big sort of foamed piece, we can then put that into a compression mold, and through heat and pressure, we can then compress it to whatever the final detail is. We can add in the textures, we can add in the spaces where the rubber goes in and everything like that. So what we end up with is with a supercritical foam, you end up with something that's much, much lighter and more resilient. And that's sort of the goal of running shoes, and what runners are really looking for is how do we get more bounce with less ounce, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, and that's absolutely the first striking thing. Apart from, I remember the Razor had speed written down it, which I think looked awesome, and I'm so glad you put that back in. It's such a good shoe. But that was really the sort of first. But it was that initial feeling of lightness from the shoe that I never felt really in any other sort of workout shoe that Razor was. I never felt that lightness, and it just killed everything that was out there in terms of the feeling of lightness, but also the responsiveness from the Hyperburst, because you think, oh, this is a bit firm, but actually when you start leaning on the foam, it really responds. And that was the kind of difference. Some of the, let's say, more traditional, not racing flats, but those older school faster shoes, they had foams in them back then that were firm, and they stayed firm, and you really felt the surface underneath. But when that shoe got introduced, you really did feel that rebound from the foam, which is kind of cool. And then to see where you've sort of taken that, and even to go back to the Max Road 6, which you've pumped up to 41 mils, is that right?
That is correct, yep.
Which is incredible, really. And the thing is with the Max Road 6 is that it doesn't feel unstable, where, if you had, we won't talk about the brands, but if you had another over 40 mil stack of a soft foam, it becomes incredibly unstable unless you've got some, it's particularly wide or there's some plate in there. But how you get away with it is, and yes, the Max Road 6 is heavier than the previous version because the amount of foam here, but it doesn't feel overly heavy. It's really weird. How have you got this shoe with this amount of stack? On the scales, it's heavy, but it doesn't feel heavy. Is that the Hyperburst, or?
It is. We, like, as you mentioned, we did have a weight gain from the Max Road 5 to the Max Road 6, kind of where we had been in the past. We were always going to be lightest in class. That was sort of our goal. As we moved from the 5 to the 6, when we got into the 5 and maybe the Ride 9, 10, our shoes, because they were so lightweight, almost had sort of a more dispensable type feel to them, disposable. And so when we went to the Max Road 6, what we really wanted to do was keep that runner in mind. That increase in weight really comes from a couple things. One, as you mentioned, we went thicker in stack, so you've got a lot more foam underneath the foot. We've also added quite a bit more rubber. So you're really not going to wear out the outsole anytime soon. There's a lot of Goodyear rubber on the outsole. We also went to that arch fit footbed on the inside, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But because of the contouring, that's also thicker. It's got a better type of foam in it, so that also adds some weight. And then we also went a little heavier on the upper mesh itself. We kind of clicked it up a notch or two, again, just to give it a little bit better hand feel. The upper stands up a little bit better. It locks the foot down a little bit better. So all of those things sort of attributed to the weight increase. But one of the things that you've sort of noticed is the midsole. And where that shines is, we talked about supercritical foaming, and we started with this single density EVA piece on the original Hyperburst shoes. Now, as we move into Hyperburst Ice, it's actually core carrier system. So think of this as sort of a Hyperburst 2.0. It's lighter weight. It's even more responsive and resilient. And what we do is we have a carrier, a thin carrier of that original Hyperburst, which can be a little bit firmer. When we put those two together, we then put this through the supercritical foaming process, and what we get is that Hyperburst Ice midsole.
Wow.
So you have that softer core directly under the foot, but then you've got a little bit firmer carrier on there, which gives you more of that stability that you've been noticing. And one of the interesting things is, because we don't put any catalysts or anything into the foam, you can actually see the green color from the core coming through the sidewall. And that's it
looks really cool.
Yeah, and that's what kind of gives Hyperburst Ice both its performance and comfort features, but it also has a pretty unique look. When you look at, a Hoka, when you look at, you can tell a Hoka from across the parking lot, and that's kind of what we were hoping with the Hyperburst Ice, is that when you start to see these glowing midsoles, people can start to associate that with Skechers.
And you get it on the Ride. I mean, the Ride 11. I mean, I did a video about the Ride 11. I absolutely love that shoe, and I love that shoe because I basically live in it. I've got two pairs, and I live in it. I had them at the weekend where we was camping and we was doing all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's such a good shoe, and you've got we'll come on to the outsole on it, but I did a video about it because it is it's one of those good examples of a shoe, right? Not everybody's got £200 to spend on a carbon plated training shoe, right? Some people just want to go out the door, run for their mental health or whatever reason, right? And you want just one shoe that you can go gym, 3 miles, around the park, walk the dog, take the kids to Tesco, to the supermarket, and then you can do all your active. That Ride 11 is the best example that I have of a shoe like that. And it's also very good in terms of price point as well. And that has that sort of silhouette on the midsole as well. And it's just so comfortable. And that's the thing.
And what the secret sauce is on that shoe is the Max Road 5 got such great reviews. People absolutely love that Max Road 5. So really the Max Road 5 almost became the Ride 11. When you look at the Ride 11, the stack heights, everything is very similar to the way we set up that Max Road 5. We paint the midsole top line so that the overall midsole thickness doesn't look as thick, but it is a 38, 32 midsole. So you still have a lot of underfoot foam on the Ride 11, which was the same as what the Max Road 5 was. And then on the Max Road 6, we went even more.
Yeah, the Max Road 5, I mean, I just love that shoe. And I know a friend of mine, Simon, I mean, we've done like a 400-mile review of that shoe with him. I mean, he keeps shipping them in from the US. If there's any supply out there, the boy wants them because he absolutely loves it. It was such a good shoe, that was. It was it literally could do everything because you had the plate in there, and it was so durable. It was just perfect. It felt great on long runs. It felt great on the easy stuff. It was fun. But the Ride, honestly, the Ride 11, I think this year is a home run. Don't get me wrong, because I'm loving the Max Road 6, especially at the moment, marathon training for me. Cruising about, it's comfortable. It's just a cruising machine. But the Ride 11 is phenomenal. Now, I feel if it's okay with you, I think we'll jump to the uppers, because you mentioned the upper on the Max Road 6. You changed it up.
Mhm.
I'm interested to know in terms of the design process, because some brands this year I've noticed their uppers have become warmer. Now, I'm thinking Skechers a few years ago had like the knit uppers on them that were warmer.
Yep.
What's the sort of thought process, design processes that goes into the upper? I mean, the Max Road 6 is a great example, the one I'm holding here. Again, apologies for the podcast, where you've added design, you've added overlays on it, which I'm sure we'll come on to, is adding some form of structure to the upper, right?
Yep.
But what's the sort of process in terms of choosing an upper and that kind of thing?
That's always sort of the balance, is you want something that's lightweight, but you also want a little bit of body to it, to that mesh. You also want something that is breathable, but you also don't want big holes in it, something that looks like something from the 80s or the 90s. So there's always sort of a balance, a give and take between design and between the engineering team and between the marketing team. And as you mentioned, we kind of went down that path where we were knitting uppers by size. And what you have to do is, it gave you the ability to add stretch in certain areas, add support in certain areas so you could get a really nice lockdown, but the upper wasn't too constricting. It would stretch in certain areas. But one of the things that we found is that we were just all over the place. It was hard for us to sort of make consistent knit uppers. So for us, we decided to go back to the mesh. The mesh gives us a lot of advantages, lighter weight. We can still engineer mesh, to size, so we're not throwing away a lot of material. And as you said, those uppers, you can take some overlays. We can also do things on the inside with reinforcements, toe box materials, eye stay materials, because ideally you want something light, something supple that conforms to the foot, but also gives you a nice lockdown. And so you're constantly sort of in motion. Those three things sometimes are kind of moving in opposite directions. So that's sort of the give and take of creating an upper, is you want to have the aesthetics, but you also need those performance of breathability, of lockdown, of stretch. So you're asking this upper to do 7 or 8 things all at the same time. And some of those things are almost polar opposites of each other at times.
Come on to the Razor 4, because as an up-tempo shoe, that's one of the best out there, because that thing wants you to run fast. If you put that on for an up-tempo session, that thing is quick. It feels quick. With the Hyperburst Pro, it's a noticeable difference in the Razor versus the previous versions. That we spoke about that feeling of firmness, which is that sort of traditional feeling, but the new one is that step up in terms of the feeling of speed from it. But interestingly also, because we were still on the uppers, you changed the upper on the Razor as well, from that sort of mono mesh original, then you went to that sort of mesh upper, let's call it.
Yeah, we've always had a little bit of hyper mono in there, and what we've done is we've played with the percentage of it. As you mentioned, some of the original, if you remember the Speed Elite, this was almost 100% mono mesh upper. We then went to more of a mono poly, and a couple benefits. One, the poly in there, like I mentioned, it gives you a nice suppleness. It's a little softer on the foot. If you have a little bit more narrow foot or a little bit wider foot, it's not going to be quite as restrictive on there. Also, a lot of times, people are throwing water on themselves, or maybe you're getting perspiration. Sure. So having that hyper mono in there, it doesn't absorb water. So it actually will keep the shoe lighter throughout a race, especially if you're running in the rain, or like I said, it's a hot day and you're dousing yourself with water. So there's some great benefits. That mono doesn't stretch, so it allows you to get a really nice lockdown. Having the poly around it gives more of a suppleness, a little softness. We can engineer it to have more stretch in the toe box in different areas where you don't want it to be so restrictive. But definitely when you get to the training side, Max Road and Ride, there's very little to no mono. And then on the up-tempo stuff, there definitely is a higher percentage of mono mixed in.
That's interesting.
Yep.
I'm going to move on to the outsole, because we're sort of in that the faster stuff, the comfortable stuff. But what you guys do really well is with your partnership with Goodyear, is that you provide a shoe that's got a lot of tread on it, because some shoes out there, they've gone like the other way. You've got exposed, like the Kinvara is a great example. It's exposed basically EVA on the bottom of it, right? That wears out very quickly. You mentioned Hoka, same with the Hoka 5. Mac 5, but you guys, especially with the Razor, for example, that's got a great amount of coverage from Goodyear. When you're testing these things, what's the sort of mileage that you think a shoe should last Is there a number you put on it, or is there like a lifespan that you give a shoe when you're working on an outsole?
Yeah, that's always a tough question because people definitely abuse shoes differently.
Mm.
Some people can go 1,000 miles in a shoe and
Hmm.
cut grass in the end with it, and it's still fine. Some people can wear a shoe out into 250 miles. For us, the way Goodyear came about is again on that original Razor 3. We had, like you said, we had more strategic locations. We lightened the shoe up by not having rubber where you didn't need it. This was regular Skechers rubber, which was really great at the time. You can see from the side, it's very, very thin. And one of the feedback that we were getting is, like you said, it felt a little bit more disposable. People were wearing through it really quickly. So when we went to the Speed Elite, that's when we first started working with Goodyear. We worked with Goodyear. They had a couple different rubber compounds. One of them is called Weather Adapt, and that actually comes from more of a snow tire compound. If you've ever driven with snow tires, kind of the key to them is they stay soft in very warm and very cold temperatures. So in the winter when it's snowing, that tire stays soft. It's going to allow you to get better traction on the ice and snow. And then they also have a material called Goodyear Gold that actually comes from more of the court, like tennis and pickleball type products. And so we started working with them. They have it's a soy based. They actually use it like in police tires. So police tires get a lot of mileage on them. So that was kind of where we started to work with Goodyear. Was we wanted to innovate. We wanted to be able to keep that rubber nice and thin, but just increase the durability, increase the traction on both wet and dry. And really working with Goodyear kind of allowed us to do that. Then as we moved into more of the training side, as you mentioned, now we can just kind of go crazy. We've got the flex in there, but we've got deeper tread. So you definitely have more versatility in our outsole. So you can definitely take these off the road to your favorite trail, dirt path. You can run on the grass. And you're going to have the traction. But you can also see from the side, there's some thickness to that rubber as well. So typically, we expect most people to probably get, in that 500-mile range for our training shoes, especially because we have beefed it up. We want people to get the full life out of the shoe. It doesn't make sense for us to have this incredible midsole that can go 1,000 miles and an upper that can go 1,000 miles, and you got an outsole that bombs out after 200 miles.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we wanted all three of those things to kind of complement each other. So that you really can get a great amount of life out of our running shoes.
And that's a brilliant way of putting it, because you're looking for the shoe, from the parts we've spoken about to all work together. And you say it's a balance when designing. I suppose you're making decisions. Okay, we can go this direction, but we may have to sacrifice a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but we're going to get more performance. I think for me, and again, I've done a video about outsoles and things like that, because it's a really important thing. And I think uppers we don't talk about much either in terms of like shoe reviews and stuff, but also I think outsoles. It's not just from the sort of durability of the shoe, but some of the current shoes. I'm not going to know. No, they're terrible in greasy conditions, right? They are terrible things.
Yep.
And they're borderline dangerous, some of them. And you think to yourself, it's so important to stay connected to that ground. And like you said, you want a shoe, if you're only about to afford one shoe, to be able to do multiple terrains in it. That's why, again, we love the Max Road series.
Yep.
And now with, obviously the Ride as well, because you can go light trails, gravel paths. Mm-hmm. I run up and down the rivers, and some of that's grass, and then you're back onto the tarmac. It's that what you've created with your outsoles is that functionality to be able to do everything. Yeah, you may have sacrificed a little bit of weight to give that durability and that versatility, but I think most runners now are willing to give a little bit of something up to get something quite rewarding back, which I think is a really you say that it's not a game changer, I say, with the Goodyear, but it almost is for you guys, right?
It is. Shoes continue to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And part of that is because you're sacrificing the durability. Like I mentioned earlier on foams, there's just a few levers that you can pull. And when you maximize something, you're minimizing something else. And so for us, we like I said, for the first 5 or 6 years of our existence in tech running, we definitely were on the lightest in class side. We wanted all of our shoes to be super lightweight. We grinded out over every gram we could take out of a shoe. And then kind of what we started finding out is you can put something on the scale, and like you said, you can see a 10 or 11 ounce number, but when it's on your feet, you typically don't notice it being that heavy.
Yeah.
If you have the right rocker, great transition, we have our hyper arc that gets you from the heel to the toe off. If you have a good transition from heel to toe that's not real flat and slappy, if you have a really responsive material midsole foam underfoot, the shoe suddenly lightens up because you're getting the responsiveness from it. You're rolling through the toe very smoothly, efficiently, and very quietly. So all of those things add up to you can go a little heavier and get some more durability out of the shoe without it feeling heavy or clunky on your feet.
Yeah, and you just again summed up my thoughts about the Max Road 6. Yeah, it's gone up in weight, but like you just said, with those other things that you've then put into play, actually on foot, it doesn't feel like what it weighs in the hand, and it always defies logic for me how you go, oh, this is a little bit heavier, but then you put it on, you don't notice the weight at all, that's a testament to the technology and the innovation that's coming through in the shoes. Now, I want to talk about carbon plates because it's fascinating. But before we do that, there is the arch fit technology that you introduced across the board. For those who don't know what that is and why it's important, can we just dive into that quickly?
Sure, absolutely. So ArchFit for us, we actually work with an outside podiatrist firm. So this isn't Skechers innovation team or anyone thinking, hey, well, we need a more ArchFit or arch support in a shoe. We actually work with an outside podiatrist firm. They had over 20 years of foot scan data, and they were really able to help us and tell us what the morphology of the foot is looking like through the gait cycle, through the swing cycle. And from that, they were able to kind of give us a contour. So really the arch fit is sort of three different components. The first and most obvious is sort of this contouring that runs from the ball of the foot back to the heel. It's definitely going to have more arch contouring in there. If you take out footbeds of all the big brands in this running space, they're all incredibly cheap. I used to work at some big brands in Beaverton and some other ones. And I can tell you that whenever you're over budget, the first place you take cost out is you put in a crappier footbed. So the second component of Arch Fit is this green foam. We've gone to a boutique foam. This was on the original Arch Fit shoes. You'll notice through here we put these compliance pins. Yeah. Because as your foot is running, it's flattening out. You have to be able to have this more compliant in the arch area. Because if not, it's going to feel like there's something hard just up underneath your arch, and it's going to be very irritating. The third component that's really important is this deeper heel cup. You can see how much molding it is across the heel. When you're running and walking, the fatty part of your heel actually works as a natural shock absorber. So the more you can support that fatty part of your heel, the more efficient your body is going to be in dealing with that shock of, hitting the ground with your heel. But as we've sort of moved on, this was the original version. This was a high-end kind of boutique EVA. With more of our recent shoes, we've actually gone to a Hyperburst Pro footbed. So again, same componentry with that nice contouring from metatarsals to the heel. You still have that molded heel pocket for helping with shock absorption, but now you've got that TPEE foam underneath the foot. It's just an amazing experience. It's taking what we love about our midsoles and putting it right up underneath the bottom of your foot. So all of the shoes that come with those Hyperburst Pro footbeds, that's now what you're going to be getting is this incredible material. It has a very, very low compression set where normal running shoes, again, you go do 50 miles, you take it out, and it's pretty much dead. Yeah. Now you're going to have a footbed that will complement that high mileage outsole and that high mileage midsole foam and that high mileage upper. Now you've got a footbed on the inside that's not only going to give you the support and the stability, but it's also going to give you some of that resiliency and that springiness directly underfoot.
And I think you'll see. It's funny. I think you're seeing more of that sort of. You say about the cutting back, but the investment in the flat in the sock liners or whatever you call them. I mean, like the other brands out there, they're adding some of their foams that were on the midsole. They're putting them into those sock liners to increase the comfort levels. It's basically following what you guys are doing, and it is. I mean, I coach as well, so I hear all the time people asking me, "Oh, that shoe, Chris, the arch on the thing was just killing me," or this and that, and it's such an important part. I don't think people necessarily understand what's going on around the arch and the fit, and like you just described brilliantly how it all works. But as people like, who don't know about these running shoes, they're just like, well, I go to my local running shop and then they get given this. But then, all of a sudden they're getting pain in their arch of their foot or from another element. And it's because that arch is not necessarily supported, or like you say, is working against the shoe instead of with the shoe, which is why the tech is really cool.
That's why
Thank you for explaining
a lot of running shops sell aftermarket footbeds.
Yeah.
Because they know that people are going to have plantar fasciitis and plantar fascia issues and heel pain and ball of foot pain, and so giving them an improved aftermarket insert is going to do a lot of the similar things that we just talked about, except now it's included with your original purchase price.
Yeah, exactly right. That's a brilliant way of putting it. Yeah. Okay, right. So favorite part of the conversation: carbon plates. Right. So you guys. I'll grab the mat. So we've got in here, we've got the training plate, H plate, or whatever, it's the carbon infused plate in there. Whether it's it's not necessarily the latest thing anymore, but the introduction of carbon plates has obviously been a game changer probably for some in terms of racing and things like that. And then to see the introduction into training shoes is interesting. You guys again introduced the H plate or the plate element into your training shoes, I would say relatively early to some of the others out there. Yep. What at the moment in terms of technology are you doing with the carbon plate?
Okay. So for us, the first carbon plate, we had was in the Speed Elite. It was this external winglet plate. And what we were looking at is we tried true carbon fiber plates. A lot of the other brands were just sandwiching it in between. We had our plate visible. One of the things that we know about carbon fiber plates is they have a very high strength to weight ratio. But the other part is they're also very brittle. And so when you're looking at a competitor that has a full true carbon fiber plate, once they snap, you don't really see it inside of the shoe, even though it's already cracked and or snapped and it's not really doing anything. So one of the things that we came up with was having that H plate configuration so that what you can do is you can save a bunch of weight. We don't carry it into the heel. We're only keeping it in the forefoot. The other thing that we can do is underneath the ball of the foot, we can make this softer and more compliant. So as you're coming down, you're not smacking the ball of your metatarsals against a hard carbon plate. Now you've got something softer underneath the ball of foot. It also allows that midsole foam to do its job. And what we do is we've engineered, so you can see the ribs that we've engineered into here. Yeah. And it also has this winglet on here. By having that winglet on the outside, we get the stiffness that we need. We're able to save quite a bit of weight. And because we've moved it outboard of the foot, it actually provides quite a bit forefoot stability. Mm-hmm. And that's why we started getting the idea of, okay, not only are these plates meant to sort of be propulsive, they don't flex. So you're really talking about moving from midfoot to toe off in a very efficient manner. It doesn't make everybody more efficient. It makes the most efficient runners slightly more efficient. Yeah. But what we found is that truly increased the forefoot stability of the shoe. And so when you go back to the Max Road 5, it had the same bottom, if you recall, as the Max Road 4 and the 4 Plus, and people hated that shoe because it was so decoupled. It felt very unstable. And when you got to the forefoot, it almost felt like you were running in sand. So what we did is we created that training plate. And this training plate, it's very soft and flexible. It doesn't have the winglet. It doesn't have the rigidity. But what it does is we put it in that forefoot, and it gives you just a little bit more snap in the toe, but it also provides more forefoot stability. You don't notice it quite as much as you're running forward, but as you go around a corner, as you step off of a curb, something like that, you're going to have that plate underfoot, and it sits in the midsole. Let me see, kind of like this. And then you'll have one on this side as well. Well, now you've got something in here that you can push against to mitigate those shear forces. So it really does provide a springier toe off, and it provides more forefoot stability. We're really big on listening to the athletes, working with Edward Cheserek, listening to what Meb has, his feedback. And we do a lot of A/B testing, which means we will test the Ride 11 with and without that carbon-infused training plate. And it's unanimous constantly. People love the shoes more with the plate. They don't know which one they're testing, but it always comes out that they always like it. And one of the best compliments we can get is, you hear Thomas and Robbie and other people talk about it's so subtle, like you don't even know what's in there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think Skechers needs it. Why do they even put it in there? That's what we love. We want it to be subtle. We don't want it to overpower. We don't want to make the forefoot really, really stiff. We still want to have that flexibility. But runners tell us constantly the shoes are better by having that training plate in there. So that's why we keep using it.
Yeah, it's interesting to have that sort of blended approach to the carbon, let's say, era. I think it's kind of cool because, as you say, you you're getting some benefit from it, whether it is the stability or whether you are getting that just a little snap off, in terms of your toe, if you are picking up the pace. I feel it myself if I'm cruising along and I'm just running easy, but then I maybe drop to a little bit of goal pace work. You can feel the shoe just helping you that little bit, but keeping you stable at the same time. But it's not aggressive. And that's the thing with some of these sort of super trainers that we're getting now that have the plates that are coming down from the race day shoes. They can be probably too aggressive to almost training unless you're doing certain like high speed workouts and things like that. So to have that sort of blend, I think, and we'll come on, it's good. This is brilliant. It's the bridge to the next section. But I think that's how probably we're going to go in terms of super trainers, is that sort of blending, where instead of maybe, and some of the brands are kind of doing it where they're not using full carbon, they're like fiberglass or different elements or complete plastic plates to try and do that. So that's kind of cool. So I think to sort of wrap things up, I'm going to try and get some trade secrets out. I'm not going to get very far, but we've come so far. I've got a video coming out in a couple of weeks about actually the Nike shoes from, remember when, that was that 4% thing with the plate and everything like that, which is still like 26 mil, 28 mil a stack, which is crazy considering we're now at 40. To see how far the shoes have come over still a relatively short space of time, with the advancement in their technologies. What do you think? Because we seem to have gone like crazy with stack heights. We've gone crazy in terms of, we just spoke about it, everything's got a bit of carbon in it. There's some work being done on the uppers now, which is great. And there's work, obviously, like we said, on the outside, which is great. And the weights are trying to be held down. It's hard because you've got all this tech that's adding to it. Where do you think we're going? Where do you think, do we stop at 40 mil because of, that's just because of the rules? Or do we continue to push that? Or do you think we're going to go back? Where do you think we go?
Yeah, I think the 40 millimeters is sort of a kind of a dotted line. We intentionally went 41 on the Max Road, not because anyone's going to be, trying to get World Athletics to certify it, but it doesn't make any sense. It just so happened that Nike had a shoe that was at 40, and boy, guess what? World Athletics happened to make their standard 40 millimeters.
Amazing.
It's very arbitrary. The height itself actually does give you, from our lab testing and our biomechanical testing, it does give you an advantage because you're higher off the ground. Every stride is just that little bit longer. And so it does make you a little bit more efficient, really, because you're taking fewer steps to get the same amount of distance. So having those higher stack heights is providing a performance advantage. But as you mentioned, there starts to be a trade-off with stability. Some of the Primax and some of those original 4%, when I put them on, I look like a baby giraffe walking around, all wobbly, and I could barely even walk in them. So forget about trying to run in them. But that's sort of the balance. Is the higher you get off the ground, you have to control that with stability. Hoka has a great solution where their midsoles are pretty angled, so pretty wide bases on there. A lot of the racing shoes don't do that because that wider base adds more foam, it adds more rubber, it adds more weight. So they really carve it out. It's very, very narrow on the bottom. But I think that's where you're going to continue to go, because as you talk about the Max Road 6, the objective of that shoe was really for that guy or girl who's trotting around their neighborhood. They really don't want to feel the ground at all. And that's really gives them that experience. And then somebody like you who wants to do that kind of workout, but also pick up the pace once in a while, we have the Ride. Now you've got something that's a little more connected with the ground, but yet it still, dissolves a lot of those ground reaction forces. So I think as we go forward, you're going to continue to see foams probably evolve the most. We talked earlier about like uppers. Well, nothing really exciting is coming out in uppers. Probably the most exciting thing in the last 30 years were kind of the knit sock type uppers that we talked a little bit about. But there really hasn't been a lot of innovation in uppers. There really hasn't been a lot of innovation in outsole rubber. Most of the innovation is coming in midsole foam. And then for us, a lot of innovation is in the insole itself. So I think you're going to continue to see that because as we go forward, you can continue to give that runner more and more foam underfoot and keep it at the same weight. And I think that's the key when you look at it. If you look at some of those racing flats, from the mid 90s, the weight of those versus the weight of a super shoe today, they're really not that far off because the materials have gotten so much lighter weight over the last, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I that's where I feel it's going as well. Is that sort of it's that battle to make the foams more sort of explosive and the power that you get from them, but then make them lighter, make them more controllable in terms of stability as well. It is a hard. I don't know how you guys do it, but to get that responsiveness and to give you that ride, but also the comfort. Again, going back to it's not all about performance, and that's the great thing with Skechers. And I've said it all along is that it's the comfort factor. It's the fact of all the shoes, whether you're in your working boots, there's still toe caps that Skechers make, or the slip-ons, that whatever you do, it's that comfort level, and that's always been for me with the Skechers brand, is the comfort, and that's why I was blown away originally going back to that Speed Elite. How fast and light that thing felt from you guys. It was just like wow, and then to see. The evolution as you've gone on with the Hyperburst, now Hyperburst Ice. I mean, that was just phenomenal when I saw that. Again, give a shout out to Thomas and Believe in the Run. When I saw them interview you and you was talking about that in that video about the Hyperburst Ice, I was like, this is going to be incredible to see, where you've now taken it to the next level. And the shoes this year, I think where you're at this year, I think the shoes are phenomenal. You've got the Razor 4, which I think is, with the Hyperburst Pro for tempo workouts, even up to the half marathon distance, is a phenomenal shoe. People don't give that. Yeah, they don't give that credit. Also, it's got speed written down the side of it, which is awesome. And then you've got the Goodyear rubber, which it lasts forever, right? This thing. The Max Road 6 is phenomenal. It's just so damn comfortable. You can. I mean, I was camping in them at the weekend, so that just tells you everything. And then like I said, the Ride 11 is your go-to shoe for literally everything. Yep. There's nothing that shoe can't do. It is such a good shoe. So you guys, I can't wait to see, and I'm going to hopefully be there in at the end of the year to see what you've got planned for next year, because I'm excited to see where this next level goes, or the sort of development tweaks that you guys are going to do. So yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. I've just spent 45 minutes geeking out. So thank you very much for basically putting up with me. And
we can go another 45 minutes if you're up to it. I'm not ready to stop yet.
But it's the sort of thing you can literally talk about all day. This, when you're into these sort of shoes and the technology that go into it, and hopefully the guys and girls who are listening to this on their run and trying to understand a little bit what goes into these shoe design. And understanding, I think, a little bit more. And I think to be fair to again, Believe in the Run, people like that, to the education around, and then even like the guys kind of from Running Warehouse, talking about the design processes and making runners understand a little bit what goes into these shoes, hopefully gives them better thought behind what they're purchasing. So, there isn't that. We spoke about it going into that run. So, I'm going to be given that pair of shoes because they've got like 15,000 boxes behind. Right. Actually thinking about, I need the arch fit. That sounds interesting. That I suffer a little bit of plantar. Maybe that is a route to go down, right? And I think that's the cool thing with the YouTube and podcast is that education. So I really appreciate you taking the time for coming on. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you having me.
No, thank you very much. And again, I'm hoping to see you later on in the year. That'd be awesome. So I'm going to somehow work out how to do the outro graphic. So thanks very much, Keith.
Yep,
and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good.